right, so we are live. So welcome back to Coach Connect. Here's where we explore the stories and strategies and insights from trailblazers who are transforming the world of coaching and well-being. What drives their success? What fuels their passion for helping others? And we're here to uncover their secrets and share them with you. This show is brought to you by Vibely.io, the all-in-one coaching platform designed to empower coaches with tools, resources, and support they need to thrive and help their clients achieve meaningful, lasting growth. I'm Dr. Diego Salinas, your guide on this journey. As a neuroscientist, physician, health coach, and co founder of Vibely, I'm committed to celebrating the incredible work of coaches everywhere and helping them unlock their full potential. So let's dive in deep into what makes coaching powerful and a force of change. Our guest today is Dr. Cherie O'Neill. She's the Director of Integrative Health and Wellbeing Coaching Programs at the Earl E. Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. She's also the owner and CEO of Wellness Coaching Elevated, a company dedicated to advancing the skills of health and wellness coaches, as well as the founder of NBHWC-approved School for Inclusion Health Coaching. Previously, Dr. O'Neill served as a senior manager of design and development in Western Government University Academy, an educational startup leveraging health coaching methodologies with emotional intelligence to support student well-being. She's held academic roles as a concentration track director, associate professor, and adjunct instructor in the PhD in Health and Science program at Rocky Mountain University for health professionals, where she mentored PhD candidates focusing on health and well-being coaching. A fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine, Dr. Neal serves as the Exercise and Medicine Credential Committee and co-author of Behavior Change module for the new EIM certification exam. She's also been an EIM emerging leader and frequently presents on integration of exercise and wellness coaching in healthcare. Dr. Neal is a contributing author to the American Council on Exercise, The Professional's Guide to Health and Wellness Coaching. With extensive expertise across health and wellness sectors, including federal grants, health departments, insurance companies, and healthcare systems, Dr. Neal brings a wealth of knowledge to her teaching and coaching roles. Her certification includes ACSM certification exercise physiologist, physical activity and public health specialist, exercise in medicine, and national board health and wellness coaching. Additionally, she's a well-coached certified health and well-being coach and a qualified administrator of the Intercultural Development Inventory. Dr. Cherie O'Neill, thank you for being on our podcast today. Really excited to have you here.
I'm so sorry. I should have sent you the shorter version. Sometimes I'm not sure which version I sent. I appreciate that.
We
Thank you
should
for having
include
me.
all the greatness you've done, right?
That's a little long.
So the passion comes through. So, Dr. Cherie, kind of went over your long history in coaching or well-being. But I'm curious, what kind of got you started in this sector? How did you start getting into health and wellness coaching, and how have your passions flown from there?
Wow, what a bold first question. Yeah. Just for today, I mean, Cherie is just fine. Is Diego fine with you?
Uh,
Okay.
sure, yes, please.
Okay. Okay. So I was a precocious high school student, and I was in a psychology class, and my teacher, we would chat after class every day because I had so many questions about behavior change. I've just naturally been curious. And I had some parental figures that were smokers at the time. And so I'd always want to talk to him about, why don't people just quit smoking? I'm so naive at the time, like they should just quit. And he would always chat me up after about why, change is hard and things like that. And one day he said to me, think about how hard it is to change yourself. Now go ahead and try to change somebody else. And I don't think I got it at the time, right? Like I just was like, oh, okay, and I walked off. But 10 years later, I still thought about that. And I thought, I finally got it, what he was saying. Like, you can't change other people. Like, we can't do that as human beings. You can only change yourself, right? It has to be internally driven. And then I went into exercise science. That's my background. I was faculty in exercise science for 15 years in Minnesota. And I realized that students were leaving the program knowing a lot about exercise. And we had a master's program, cardiac rehab, things like that. But when it came to actually helping someone change their behavior and become more active, we were not doing a good job. Those competencies didn't exist on our standard board exams in exercise science at the time. And I've saw the hole. And so I started creating coursework in behavior change, getting up to speed, reading every book, taking every class. And once I realized the power of behavior change, there was like no looking back. And then, of course, that led to health coaching. How could it not? That's what we are experts in behavior change. So now I'm here.
Wow, yeah.
Now I'm here. Bye, ex-clients. Hello, health coaching.
Right. And it sounds like though you mentioned you study exercise physiology that I remember when I was studying medicine, and my initial thought too was if I could understand pathophysiology, right? A
Mhm.
big word for just how diseases happen, right?
Yeah.
Or normal health and disease. If I could understand it and teach it, explain it, demystify it,
Yeah.
that would be what would convince people to change. Right. And I think to the point of your parents' story, your family story, when I talk about this to the general audience, I say, you ever seen someone smoke a cigarette? Has that person ever said, oh, I didn't know this was bad for me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and now I
Right.
take that same idea to, so I have a couple students in class right now that are from the technology side of the University of Minnesota taking health behavior change theory, and they're developing apps. And I keep saying to them, is your app educational? Yes. Is it anything else? No. Education doesn't change behavior. I don't know how many times we have to scream this from, I don't know, the back row, but I keep reminding him. And now, because of this, like, sort of realization that education doesn't change behavior, they're redoing the entire design of the app. I'm like, yes, finally.
Exactly.
People know what is good and bad and what to do generally. They do, they know. And if they
Yeah.
don't, they can Google it. They can Google it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are a handful of times where information has been helpful or a gap. But when I lecture on this stuff too to students, I tell them information is not the most limiting factor of well-being.
No.
Right? No one's gone through a drive-through and been like, I didn't know this burgers and fries and Coke were not a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think we wish the brain worked a certain way. Logic machine that if you just put this in, it will do the quote unquote right thing. I think health coaching really says, how does the brain actually work versus what we wish it would work like?
Yeah. And
You know?
not only how does the brain work, but how does that interact with the environment? How much does environment influence behavior? Because that, your family unit, the state your zip code is a predictor of your mortality. If we don't recognize the role that plays in our health and well-being, we're missing the boat. So that piece too, I think, is equally as important.
Right. Social determinants of health, right?
Mhm.
That fact I remember learning at med school is astonishing, right? And I mean, I did pediatrics, so I always think of a family unit.
Yep.
The child's health is directly related to what's happening in the family, both behavior-wise in terms of nutrition and feeding habits, but also stress and how
Yeah.
much cortisol is going through the family and kind of traumas or
Mhm.
lack of resources, right? Or lack of social support, even what cultures deem as cool or not cool, or healthy to do or not healthy. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's
And
really
that's
not only
why,
the whole person, but the whole environment.
yeah, yeah, whole person, whole environment. And that's why I think the new competencies, what we're talking about today, is what we did really right in redesigning them. This whole team we were a part of is really focused on structural determinants of health, social determinants of health, and whole health in general. I think that was the right direction to go.
Yeah. So let's dive into a little bit this the update committee, and that's how I had the pleasure of meeting you and kind of working together. And so most people on this podcast are coaches, but as a background for those who are students or earlier on, um, the NBME is the National Board of Medical Examiners, right? So
Mhm.
when you say your doctor is board certified or your dentist is board certified, they're referring to that, the NBME, the National Board of Medical Examiners.
Mhm.
And the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches is a subset, is a nonprofit subset of under the NBME. After all the overwhelming evidence in public health showing that coaching is effective for our public health needs, and it started with very traditional things that the public health sector faces, related to obesity, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, these
Mhm.
chronic conditions that really where really behavior change is the main cause of morbidity, mortality, expenditure in healthcare.
Yep.
And before the model, Cherie was, yeah, let's train more about it, let's have more lectures, more
Yeah.
PowerPoints, more handouts, right?
Yeah.
So all we did was waste a bunch of trees and no one got any better.
Yeah.
And then through this overwhelming evidence from many different studies showing that it's efficacious, That's where the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches started.
Yep.
Right. And then just maybe a very brief background of a whole episode talking about it in general. And now that's why you can be a board certified health and wellness coach, which means you actually go to a program that trains people based off of these competencies. So the blueprint is kind of like the holy grail. What do the programs who are going to be approved by NBHWC have to adhere to? The content, the skills that they learn, and also this blueprint is also responsible for the questions on the certifying exam. So every certified health coach has to take a certifying exam. You go to Prometric, get your headphones on, take a 4-hour test, and then also recertify throughout your profession to make sure you're continuing to develop. So that blueprint was originally established in the first round, and it hadn't been updated in 2017.
Yeah.
And so the boards put out basically applications for subject matter experts, coaches, educators, people in the field and looking for a variety of expertise, and to really come together as a collaborative nationwide effort to update this. If we're asking our coaches to stay up to date, so does the certifying examination and program. And that's where we met Cherie. And I gotta say, for me, that was my first time working with the boards. And it was a real full circle moment for me, pulling up to, and I want to hear your experience too, pulling up to Philadelphia, where the NBME is located, and then getting out of the car and just seeing those big letters and like that blue background, NBME.
Yeah.
And I had this flashback. I was like, wait, I was here 12 years ago taking medical step exams.
I know these people.
A full circle moment. Yeah, I was like, oh, people said it couldn't be done, but here I am being involved in systemic change, right? So really, it's truly been an honor to work with these professionals, everyone who's so dedicated, so brilliant, and so evidence-based as well, right? What a beautiful combination. That's where I got to meet you and work together. Curious, how did you start with that program, or have you worked with boards beforehand? Tell us a little your background there.
Yeah, I had a little bit, only as a result of my predecessor established the board. She was the co-founder of the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, Karen Lawson and Margaret Moore, to their greatest credit. And Karen Lawson retired, and I took over her position at the University of Minnesota. So there was a big connection there. And so I had done a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But to pull up to the NBME, my first thought was like a breath out of health coaching has finally made it. Like we're finally getting the recognition, because let's be real, the NBME is a super powerful, important organization in, the health, I'll just keep it broad, the health disciplines. And to see us as a subsidiary of that, and to go there and to have them help guide us to make the most valid and reliable exam of questions that apply to how coaching exists in the world today. It just felt like, oh, finally, maybe I can ease up on my fight for the profession, like we finally kind of made it. So that felt really good. And then walking into the room and seeing, names I've seen and people I've wanted to meet for so long around the room. I think there was 15 of us. 15,
yeah,
16.
15 of us, yeah.
I think there was over 200 applicants to get on this committee. So I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be here, like, I don't know. But it was great because we had such a good variety. Medical doctors like you, academic faculty instructors. We had representation from lots of industry that hire health coaches. Then we had for-profits, not-for-profits. I just thought the representation was so well-rounded that I knew right out of the gate these were going to be really good, because every perspective mattered. It really did.
Yeah. And, and besides the 15 of us, the board had beforehand actually put out surveys, right? So it wasn't just us, it was us kind of helping navigate and see what the general population was saying as well of coaches. So it wasn't just leading from above. It was really, we're kind of honored to be able to take this information. So they did all these surveys, what's missing, what's been changing, what does the board need to address? And you kind of mentioned that a little earlier, Cherie. Maybe you can say, what are those things that really stood out that needed to be included in those updates? What people were asking for?
Yeah. They did do a lot of focus groups too, as part of that process, along with the surveys. I think I participated in a couple of them. But I would say, so the initial competencies that were written a long time ago. They were ready to be updated, but to no fault of that original committee. I mean, they created competencies out of thin air for a profession that didn't really exist, and they did an outstanding job. They really did. Like, we had a base to
Yes.
work from that was pretty dang good. I'll say that. But as any
Yeah.
discipline
Yes.
grows, right, things have to change as part of the process. Every discipline goes through this. And as a result of us heading more and more into healthcare there and recognizing our lack of diversity in particular, I would argue that is a strong demand for change. I think when your discipline's headed into a new domain, you recognize fully that you're lacking the diversity you need. And my favorite part, recognizing that coaching presence didn't really make it in that first round as strongly as I think we
Mm.
needed it to be. Um, that those three areas in particular, I think, were massive changes and really, really uh, profound changes in the right direction for what we need today.
Yeah, right. It's like in medicine, right? You say you want your doctor to read the latest book, not do medicine 20 years ago. Things are
Exactly.
naturally changing, and um, what's a phrase? I think it was by Newton. It said like we can see so far because we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yes, I
And
love that.
during that committee, I was really, I
Yeah.
mean, um, to everyone, it took so much longer than we anticipated, is the reality, right? So we are supposed to meet in person for 3 days, and it's like, cool, we're gonna knock it out of the park, and don't worry. But then seeing the complexity that this required to do it correct, to
Man.
do it right, I think it was really beautiful to see how much work had to be done, but how committed everyone was to do it right, not just do it quickly. And so even though it's supposed to be just, 3 days in person, it became months long projects of follow up on Zoom. So we would make some updates, send it out to more surveys and focus groups, come back, edit, refine. And it took, I mean, granted, it wasn't all in a row, but the majority of the year
Yep.
to kind of finish that project. And that was really, I think, a wonderful. The board saw the need to be flexible in doing it and the
Yeah.
commitment of everyone to do it right. And speaking of going to a room and seeing people's names, like sitting next to Ruth Wolover, I was like, oh my God, I read all these papers
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
your name on it, right? And then thinking, thank God you guys did the first round because it was so incredibly difficult to do. I couldn't imagine doing it from scratch. The amount of effort that one meant, speaking of change, right? How
Yeah.
much, what a challenge that really was. So nothing but respect for those who really paved the way for us to continue amplifying and spreading, elevating the profession.
Yeah. 100%. I always tell people I want to be Ruth when I grow up. And it's true. I still feel that way. But yes, the process was incredible because of the commitment of the group around the table. Like you said, we went 5 months longer than we were supposed to in terms of the work. And
Yeah.
we literally talked about every single word, I swear, within every
Yeah.
competency and debated and talked about, well, what's relevant and reminding ourselves. And I think it's good to remind the audience these are baseline competencies. These are not expert coaching competencies. This is the foundation of a beginner coach. There's so much more, no doubt, but this is the foundation of a beginner coach. And we had to keep reminding ourselves of that. Otherwise, you want to add 18 other theories and you want to add 18 other coaching tools and techniques and strategies. And we're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Does a foundational coach in the first year of their job need to know this? We had to keep asking ourselves that. And that helped a lot. Kudos to Jen for keeping us on
Yeah.
track. That's
A
reminding
hundred
us.
percent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where the diversity of also the different backgrounds, like, well, I teach, I'm not a program director, right? Or I don't write the board exam questions, right? Having the diversity of saying, well, hold on, what does this mean to actually then a program? We only have 60 hours. How are we going to fit this into those 60 hours, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think we all came with that passion of saying, let's raise that bar super high. This is what is this? This is the first step. We're gonna raise the bar for that first step. But then
Yeah.
also I realized a big commitment then afterwards is how do we create continued education programs that
Mm.
this is the beginning part of your foundation, right? So you and I came from health coaching from already having a background in well-being in different ways. And
Yep.
so we had some kind of resources already and knowledge and experience there. Not everyone comes to the health coaching with that background, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
You don't need to. People say, "Well, how am I be a health coach? I'm not a doctor." Like, you don't need to be a doctor to be a health coach, luckily,
No.
right? And once you become a certified health coach, you can learn so much more in the areas that you find fascinating, you want to support people in. And then that's where I think coaching is really magic. It's that evidence-based lens with that individual creativity, that
Hmm.
new way of solving a solution that hasn't been written before, because every coach has unique perspectives and a new unique way of helping someone else out too. So yeah, I think it's really important for them to know this is just the beginning part of your profession.
Right.
And it is like any other healthcare profession, lifelong learning for
Exactly.
yourself, and what the evidence shows the industry is changing. Um,
What's
and I
so
think
great
some of it
about,
was the.
sorry, I
Oh,
interrupted
please,
you.
sure.
I was just going to say
I had
on
some
that
I had
note,
some lag.
no worries. On
Yeah.
that note, one thing I think we did a really nice job of, not to sit and pat ourselves on the back, but we rewrote the competencies to make them more broad, to be more uh, inclusive of that creativity you're talking about. So an example of this would be, does every program need to teach SMART goals? Do they? Does it have to be SMART goals, or can we be more open minded about what's possible in terms of goal setting with our clients? And I love that we made those types of changes. You do not have to teach SMART goals. You can teach other types of goals now, and it's not required to know SMART goals. And I think that sort of flexibility really helps the profession grow and find what works best for which population you're working with, for example. Just one example of how that creativity got added back in a little bit more, which I think is really a good change.
Yeah. That's a great concrete example of that, right? And
Yeah.
that it's, and as you mentioned, that's just, I remember all the conversations, such passionate conversations, because everyone had the same goal of like really making a difference. Like, right, sometimes
Yeah.
each word was
Yeah.
minced over. Is it and or whether or yet? And you're like, oh, it actually does make a difference. And seeing how this one, any difference over time, over different space, creates a really big, divergence. And really noticing that, like, what could this mean for someone who's writing the exam, for someone who's creating a program. And right now, I think it might have been, forget his name, was it Jim, the statistician who works for the boards?
Oh gosh.
He's a PhD in examination and stats, and I
Yeah. Just a
right
genius.
now his name's escaping
Yeah,
me.
I know.
He's
So
a genius.
sorry.
So I'll look up later or put in the comments. But so for everyone, there's 15 of us that are experts, but also people who
Yep.
work for the boards in general, not only the health and wellness coaching boards like Nicole Pope and Jennifer Lemon, but also people who just work for the NBME. And
Yeah.
his role is basically that he's a PhD in like exam writing and standardization.
Yeah.
And it was really
Psychometric.
interesting him pointing out a few
Yeah.
things. Psycho,
Yeah.
yes, right. And so he said, you know, like everything, I tell all my students too, exams aren't perfect. They're limiting. They're testing your knowledge of the skills, not the skill itself,
Yep.
right? So writing those questions are hard.
Very hard.
But he had a great point. He said, I sit into with all these things. I sit into the cardiology boards and nephrology ones, like all the different medical ones. And he said, yours is the most difficult by far.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because you're right, because it's not, oh, what is diabetes? 6.5 A1C, 5.8. Like it wasn't just like cut off numbers. Like, how do we talk about presencing? What is that? How do we write that into a competency that could then be tested and written like questions about, right? It was so nuanced because there's so much humanity and art in the
Yeah.
science of coaching. How do you
Yeah.
codify that? That thing was really illuminating.
Yeah. He kept saying to us, how do you test that? How do you test that on a multiple choice exam? How do you test that? And we're like, oh, I don't know. Like we got to figure
Hmm.
this out. And that makes it very
Yeah.
challenging. How, like you said, how do you test whether or not a coach has empathy? How do you write that case and write those answer choices, or mindfulness, or emotional intelligence of any kind, or presence, like you said? That is a very difficult thing to test with a multiple choice question. I'm so glad
Yeah.
I don't do that for them. That would be so hard.
Hats off to all those who do, and some
Yep.
were in that room as well, right? But
Yeah.
again, it points to the collaborative nature of this, right? How many? I think I went into it thinking it was more, frankly, more straightforward, right?
Yeah.
And then really
Yeah.
coming out appreciating the beautiful complexity of the work it is to have the first pass, now our second pass, and it continuing to evolve, that commitment that everyone has to again elevating the field. Um, and later, also you mentioned we mentioned that one of the big updates was, you know, DEI, social determinants of health, right? And kind of making it more broad, because culture and society is such an important part, and of your well-being, and has so
Mhm.
many variables. And so not only with its own section, but really also that was really sprinkled across all sections. This idea of like, and keep an open mind, figure it out. This is, this is constantly evolving. We can't tell you exactly what to do now. You have to use your creative lens with evidence-based practices to figure out those nuances for you and your community.
Yeah, I love how you said it's sprinkled all throughout because it truly is. Like in coaching presence, we mention the importance of understanding power imbalances, importance of understanding your own personal bias and how that shows up in a coaching relationship or coaching session. That, I mean, it's sprinkled like that throughout each of the new five. We'll call it, it's five, right? Yeah, five.
Mm.
It used to be four, and now
Mhm.
there's five sections, and we really did try to sprinkle it throughout. And then the addition of um, one I think that gets missed all the time is structural determinants of health, not just social. But the structural piece got added, which I was super proud of. That is hugely important for us, even though we as coaches work at the individual level of behavior change. That is not the most impactful way to actually change behavior. It's at the social and the like political levels. We know this. It's not to say that what we do isn't important, but those forces coming from the outside matter so much. And if you don't understand that when you're coaching someone, you're not going to do as high quality job as you would understanding those outside forces. Yeah. Strong forces.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Let's define that for maybe aren't familiar with that concept, right? The structural determinants of health. Because I remember when I was in healthcare, we call it system. We also grade on competencies, right? How we're doing our knowledge base, patient interaction, et cetera. And one was systems based care. And I remember the more I got into it, the more I realized the importance of that. I actually gave a grand round in my residency over this. It was a patient came in, a little girl, probably under 2 years old. They thought it was maybe a stomach bug and being meningitis, having sepsis, right? And we kind of saved her, and they wanted me to do a case about that. And I realized the story here is systems-based practices. I understood people in the hospital and how the system works and what radiology does, was what the lab does, and how to move along in this system, right? And so I'm curious if you can kind of define for people, right? Structure in terms of health, and really that is the milieu under which we're working. That's kind of the environment that we're trying to work in, and you can't ignore that if you're going to talk about someone's health and well-being.
Yeah. So best way I can explain it is maybe through an example. So when we talk about structural determinants, it's really about the systems that are in place that impact a health outcome. And these are not just, I mean, they can be small systems, but usually when we're talking about structural, we're talking about big systems in place. So if we think about women's health, let's talk about a woman going into an emergency room for pain, whatever, it can be pain anywhere. We know through the literature, well established, women are not treated the same as men when it comes to pain. We are given less options for pain medication. We're given a lower dosage that doesn't match the intensity of the pain. There's systems like that are in place that are baked into the decision making is what we're referencing. Or like the 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 big story I think of this year was finally recognizing that the algorithm that determines whether or not you get a new kidney was completely biased towards African Americans. It made sure basically that they got less of a chance of getting a new kidney based on some outdated data about believing there's differences between the races, which we know there's not. So it's those systems that are baked in to all the decision making that really matters. And I think health coaches need to understand that. These things matter in terms of why perhaps your client doesn't want to go see a doctor, why they don't want to get treated for their diabetes and their foot pain, because they have had experiences that matter in terms of their health. So that, I think that's the best way, is just kind of giving that example of structural issues.
Unfortunately, there's so many of
Yeah.
these examples that are barriers, right?
Yep.
Like those two are so massively impactful, but like, I mean, my brain is flooded with the amount
Yep.
of ones that are obvious, but frankly, a lot of them are not obvious. And things sometimes we don't question are the most that are most dangerous,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah.
the most right. And if you talk about well-being, or let's say talking about people's burnout in healthcare, right? The
Hmm.
structure of residency hour requirements and what that means. There's certain things you have to work within and understand that you aren't able to change as a solo person, but you have to understand how that individual out. And I think this kind of ties in nicely to actually the board itself, the NBHWC, um, its ability to be a certifying organization and having more people who are board certified coaches. I always say I get so excited every few months when I see on LinkedIn
Yeah.
more newly certified coaches, because that means we're a bigger pool of people. We can
Yeah.
have more leverage, we can have more impact as an organization, right? That's it. This is professional organization, there's system standard and practices, and that's why we've been able to get health and HSA and FSA reimbursement.
Yep.
It's why there's CPT codes, even though they're class 3, that at least
Yeah.
are starting to be and hopefully become class 1 or more work. So I really do. Um, I remember when I learned there was MBME during my health coaching program, I was like, that's that's when I really became all in, realizing this could be a force that can grow in healthcare. That one day I envision a world where people say health coach so people know exactly what a personal trainer or physical therapist does, or speech therapist,
Yeah.
or occupational therapist, or a nutritionist. It's like, oh yeah, a health coach for everyone who's a person because it can treat or prevent any any disorder, right? And so like I think it's where the field is hopefully going, and it is work to become a board certified coach. You go to approved program, you have to do your things, find 50 sessions, take the exam, but you are contributing now to a larger community that might have more impact in some of these structural determinants of health.
Yeah. I have this dream I've always had for health coaching. So we're not in healthcare yet, but we will be. There's no doubt in my mind. So we have an incredible opportunity. So right now, health equity numbers are not changing within healthcare, or very little changes have been made. We are not in there yet. We have an opportunity to train a new profession to actually make an impact on health equity within healthcare before they get in, before they're like absorbed by the system, right? And sucked into all the, we've
Mm,
always done it this way. We have a chance to really create some change agents to go in and start really addressing health equity to hopefully move the needle, or social determinants of health, however you want to frame it. But it's my dream for our profession. This is our chance. And I just really hope we capitalize on it, because it's pretty rare that a new profession enters healthcare. Like, it almost doesn't
yeah.
exist. If you really think
Yeah.
about it, they're all pretty solid in healthcare. There's not really anybody new coming in, and we're doing that. And that to me is like, oh, this is such a huge opportunity. So I hope we be smart about it and capitalize on it and become the profession that perhaps actually gets in there and starts making the difference. I have high hopes. They're like up here.
Yeah. You and me both, Cherie. And Frank, I'll be honest, I just got goosebumps when you said that because I had a flashback to my first day of health coach training, which I've talked about in different episodes. But, you know, I kind of went into it not really knowing what it was, and then seeing it in real life, all these cascade of like, oh my God, the implications of this are massive.
Yep.
I was like, and I've done research before, and like primary research and lab stuff, and kudos again. Speaking of shoulders of giants, I want to
Yeah.
God bless every researcher who is just writing grants and
Yeah.
experimenting without knowing what's happening.
Yep.
Massive hats off. It wasn't what I wanted to do, and I like the personal interaction. But like, I still want to change healthcare, contribute in some way. And when I that first day and realizing there is a board for this, I was like, this can be one of the keys that change our public health landscape in our lifetime. Not in 3 generations or 4, but like it's possible that it could be I could retire one day with healthcare being differently. I mean, I don't want to retire because I want to do it my whole life, right? But
Yeah.
right, that
Yeah.
like that this could be actual one of the keys to really change it up because there's so, and that's where I'm so dedicated to creating, this podcast, increase awareness of what it is, working with the
Yep.
boards, but frankly, even with Vibely, like I really do. While I see the potential here, Cherie,
Yeah.
I also I've seen what starting to happen in coaching, helping in healthcare, where I think healthcare has been ruined because it's not run by healthcare providers. It's
Right.
not run by doctors, nurses, pharmacists, PAs. It's run by non-healthcare providers,
Insurance companies.
insurance companies, and whenever they pay, it's a loss on a
Yeah.
ledger. They're a business, not right. And so,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
knowledge, I've said before, is I've never shot a gun. I shouldn't be a general in the army.
Nope.
I could be a medic in
You
the army,
shouldn't.
right? I could be the
Yeah.
medic, but not the general, right? So healthcare needs people besides health providers, obviously, but it
Yeah.
shouldn't be so many more thousands of times, adminers versus providers. And I think coaching, one reason I started Vibely was, or me and my co-founder started it, was kind of seeing a similar thing happen with coaching. These companies are, hire coaches out, pay them very little, micromanage them, force them to do sales calls versus coaching calls, et cetera, et cetera. But really, again, you can tell that by the rules they make, no one in that boardroom has ever been, definitely not a coach, but I don't know if they've ever been a client even,
Right.
experienced it.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know until you do it. So my goal with Vibe is to like empower, and any provider who helps with this, empower solo coaches, because that creative process, how can we
Yeah.
scale people's creativity, not limit their creativity, right? So I
Yeah.
have those high hopes too, and I'm there. Um, I'll share with you, Cherie. Someone told me when I told them I wanted to change healthcare, like they go, it's impossible, the David and Goliath system. I
Yeah.
was like, why would I be David throwing rocks? A, he wins, but if he doesn't, I'd rather try. And I
I
think
would
it's us,
rather try
all of
too.
us who are
Yeah.
passionate to right, to try to throw those rocks. Like it's too important not to.
Yeah. I mean, similar to you, it's why I started Wellness Coaching Elevated. I started it because people weren't passing the exam. And to me, to have an exam keep you from your dream career, no, that ain't right. That is
Yeah,
not right. So I thought there's
right.
got to be a way to teach people how to pass this exam so they can get on with their career and not have a high stakes exam keep them from their, I don't know, their love, their profession, their calling, if you want to call it that. So
Yeah,
I started with study groups and helping people learn how to take high stakes exams, because that in and of itself is a skill. It's a skill that has to be taught
yeah,
and learned. And of course, all the other stuff too. But yeah, I wanted to make sure people didn't quit on their dream just because of the exam. Like you said earlier, the exams are necessary. They're just what we have right now. It makes sense. I'm not against them, but we need more to pass them, because there's great coaches that didn't pass the first time and we
yes.
got them to pass the second time. So
Yeah, sure. I got another set of goosebumps here, because I think, to me, we're all also who are passionate about this industry, is how do we lower barriers
yeah,
for clients, for coaches? How do we lower, Vibe is like lowering the barrier for technology and access, right?
yeah,
Like, you're
yeah,
saying, how do we lower the barrier so people can, you're right. I remember, for me, I'll be frank with you, I've been taking a lot of exams my whole life. That's
yeah, you
exam after
have.
exam after exam.
Yeah,
Like, and when people ask me how do you get this exam, they're stressed out about it. Maybe they haven't been in academia for a while. It's been 20 years since they took the last exam. It is a skill set, and
yeah,
the exam question is just testing your knowledge of it, not how you actually apply it. Right? It's a
yeah,
starting point.
yeah,
And so I think that's what, listen, you failing the exam is not an indication of what you're like with your clients. It's necessary to do this homework, but it doesn't tell you the whole picture. It's just part of the process. And so don't let that stop you, because this is not what coaching is. Coaching is not multiple choice question. Coaching
right.
is infinite variabilities, right? And I think, as well as helping people pass that exam, I think you and I are both passionate about also continuing education within this program,
Yes.
right? So now you pass that exam, you realize, I'm coaching someone. I need more help in understanding emotion regulation, or maybe I need more information on nutrition to help some of my clients, or I don't understand this process of health or disease model enough.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that. How can I become a more confident coach, give myself more resources to better support and serve others? And I know you do some work also outside of this initial coaching program and kind of continuing education. Can you tell me a little more about things that you're doing, for those coaches already established who want to continue on and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. We do CEC courses, of course. There's so many out there. It's more just for, um, our true passion on certain topics at the team I'm speaking of. But so we just had one that was really getting at the heart of coaching the person, not the problem. We called it Coaching the Being, Not the Doing. It's one skill I
Mm,
see my students struggling with the most. So I figured, well, other people have got to be struggling with this if I see it all the time in my students. So we
yeah.
did that. And then we have Leslie Atley, who it was the former chair of the diversity committee at the board level, um, invited me to teach a master class on the new competencies. So we've got that coming out soon, which I'm super excited about, because Leslie is the expert in all the DEI competencies. Because when she asked me, I was like, oh, they're all DEI. I'm not going to teach those. And she's like, no,
Mm,
no, no. I got those covered, but you've got all the other stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. We're an amazing team. But there's just so much variety across the CECs, and you can really focus on what you want and what you need based on where you work and your clientele, like you said. So I'm most excited about the future of CECs with mental health. I think the partnership there could be huge, and we haven't even touched what's possible. There's a few companies doing it now, but partnering with therapists and coaches together, I think has it has huge potential. I'll just say that. We don't have a lot of research on it yet.
Yeah. Well, so I'm glad you brought that up again, because I was thinking about that. Let me think, somewhere like the first 15 minutes, you talk about changing the system and different levels of acuity. I was thinking the sickness versus wellness model. Coaching besides helping traditional physical ailments, which we're all one system. It's mental health is physical health. It's not different.
Hello.
Right. Someone asked me on a panel one time, I was like, it's all in the same sack of skin. Your brain is in the same sack of skin as your heart is, as your liver is. It's not a different entity, right? So of course, related. So I'm glad we're talking about that as an important organ to focus on too. And the traditional model of healthcare is really a sick care model. You have X disorder, here's how you treat it. It doesn't focus what it used to be on, and this is for guidance, how to prevent things, what to do when things are earlier on happening, the well-being part. So I think coaching really has this is really defined for this. Well, you don't have to have a diagnosis in order to improve on something. You don't have to have a panic attack to work on your stress management. You don't have to be major depression to work on your resiliency. You have to be overweight to work on your physical activity. And I do see this as coaching also helping the continuity of care. We have high acuity, say ICU level, right? And those patients also need coaches to help them recover. But also you can have more kind of look at the medical model, right? There's a bunch of different kind of doctors, gastroenterologists, cardiologists, endocrinologists. I see coaching going that way too, where yes, we're all special, like generalists, and understand most common things, but then people follow their passions, because one of the bigger pillars of success in a coaching relationship is therapeutic alliance. That's also for therapy also, actually. Right? And then on the coach's side, the biggest predictor of that is their authenticity and passions. Which again, going back to vibe, it's like I want solo coaches. When I do mental health coaching, I've done 3-hour sessions before. I've done way less coaching. One client wanted that, and we did it. Met them where they're at. I can do that, right? But not every coach has to do that. Some coaches I know do 15-minute max. Awesome. The diversity of what we do and how we practice is the magic.
It is.
Right? I think that's where it is, right? That you can choose what you want. I think partnering with mental health, or even educating coaches on, say, what if someone cries? Eventually, you're gonna have someone cry in front of you. It's gonna happen just long enough.
First session usually, which is just fine.
Right. It's gonna happen. So how do we empower them to understand this is a normal part of the process? It's not you don't have to ignore it or push it away. You don't have to solve a problem either. You can help be with someone, support the role, and them getting the right journey. You mentioned a few things you're passionate about too. They kind of came into the board. I will say one of mine that I was passionate about leaving my stamp on there was neuroscience. I was like, I want that little bullet point, neuroplasticity, right? And so that made it there. And that's where I'm creating secrets on the neuroscience of behavior change, right? There's so much beauty in this field, and so much we can learn from each other. I'm constantly learning every day from guests like you on our podcast, from students who ask amazing questions, bring back resources, from clients who bring real world challenges. And it's a beautiful evolution. And I love that coaching is so ingrained into improving. So of course our profession has improvement in its DNA.
Yeah. My little one was mindfulness. I was like, I'm going to get that word in there. It depends on it. We can be truthful about our
little
agenda.
But huge. Huge, Cherie, right? Mindfulness is the basis of how you're going to create awareness to create change, right? So I think that little word, but again, I think foundational, and giving people flexibility to discover on their own and take it to their next level too.
I want to go back to something you said real quick. You brought up something, basically you were talking about prevention. It's not just about treating disease. We also we do prevention quite well, actually, as health coaches. And that is actually my biggest fear. So right now, the reimbursement codes that were proposed are tied to diagnostic codes. And that is my biggest fear, is we are not going to get codes tied to prevention. And I'm so scared about this. we're going to end up being that profession that only focuses on after the heart attack. Once again, we don't need another one of those. We need prevention professionals in healthcare. So I am going to be honest. I am losing sleep over this fact that, again, we're starting with codes that aren't prevention based, and I'm freaking out. I'm scared.
I am
Yeah.
so glad you brought that because I mean, after this call, we're gonna talk and figure out how I can be part of that too. Because you're right, right? It's it's just it's taking her phrase. You're taking working to a broken system that may not work anymore,
Yeah.
right? You're trying to apply traditional sick care model of like what's the disease that you're treating, the intervention you're doing versus the whole one part of coaching is, like I said, we don't have to have like my personal example. I've always been a lanky guy, a tall, lanky guy. When I was doing coach training, I was like, I want to work on exercise. I can write a book about how important it is for your cardiovascular system. I just don't want to do it. And I found my own way, right? And like I
Yeah.
luckily did it now when I was in my 30s versus like having issues in my 50s or
Yeah.
60s from this lack of constant exercise, right? And even if you look at mental health, I think what a you can look at the say where the diagnosis is anxiety, major depression, right, OCD, but there's like the neutrality, right? Okay, you're doing all right, but life is more just doing all right. Like coaching can work
Yeah.
on fulfillment, satisfaction,
Yes.
purpose, feeling engaged, feeling alive, feeling connected. That is such a different quality of life to feel
Hmm.
fulfilled or engaged or connected to you and yourself than like
Hmm.
just not being super anxious.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Travis's wellness continuum. Thriving exists whether you have disease or not. You can thrive and be in chronic pain. I have chronic pain. I can still thrive and be fulfilled and connected. And yeah, I couldn't agree with that more.
Right. If you go and traditional model of therapy, they'll say, like, "What's your problem?" And you have to, and this problem would happen. I see it in the clinic when I was in medicine, but also talk to therapists who are friends of mine.
Yeah.
We're like, "What do you bill?" Like someone came in for something, and it was like it wasn't an issue. Like someone came in thinking this kid's stool was abnormal. It's normal. So you have to bill like anxious parent or something, or in therapy, adjustment sort of NOS, right? You
Yeah.
have to like create like a problem just to
Yeah.
see someone for to help someone. I think that's where coaching, you say we don't help, we serve, we support because you don't have a problem in order to improve. And I think that's a
Yeah.
great point. You're going to have me thinking a lot about this. How do we really also, as we grow, make sure that the system evolves? We can make it adapt to us or evolve to this part that's so needed prevention and fulfillment, not
Yeah.
just staving off disease.
I think you said it. You don't have to have a problem to improve and get help to improve. You don't have
Yeah.
to have a problem.
Yeah.
What the heck are
And
we
you could
doing?
have a problem. It's okay. Right?
Yeah. And
It's
you could. Yeah.
transdiagnostic, like you said. It works. Transdiagnostic means that people know across diagnoses.
Yeah.
I have patients who have a lot of diagnoses and some have none. I can still help them both. The skill set of how the brain works and where change happens is
Yeah.
applicable to both of them. Right? So it's agnostic of your diagnosis, even though sometimes people come in for because of the diagnosis, but really the process is agnostic of that. And you said the word thrive. Reason I've had started our own tagline been like violate, transition, transform, thrive, because I want clients who don't know what coaching is to think about those words. They often I think come in for a transition. I want to lose this weight or get a new job or apply to college, some transition they're looking for.
Yep.
But then what they're discovering is a transformation of the being, right? A whole system transformation, mindset shift, a whole new way of looking at things. And that's when you start really thriving.
100%. Most of the time, there's this idea that health coaches work on behavior change. And when we say behavior change, we often think about behaviors that we can see and hear. But what coaches really do is work on mindset change, which you can't see and hear necessarily. That's really what we're thinking partners, and we primarily work on mindset change. And then, of course, behavior too. But it's actually the other one that's much bigger. I would love to see that shift in our definition too. Like it's
Yeah.
behavior and mindset changes. I don't think that's quite getting across. So maybe for another big committee, we can make those changes.
Another few months.
Another one.
I, I agree with you. I think it's the difference thing is even to the point about SMART goals. I tell people I'm training, SMART goals are overrated in the sense like that's not what's unique about coaching. Like
No.
goal setting, other professions give you goals. And nutritionals say, here, it's 1,500 calories, eat this many calories. The goal is there, right? Like go to a personal trainer, you do this many push-ups, this many reps. The goal is there. The difference is coaching is the cultivating the internal motivation, the why to do it, and that mindset shift that makes you want to put the effort into the goal. And interesting how cognition and behavior interact, because some behavior does help change your cognition. How does your
Goodness.
cognition help with your
Yeah.
behavior,
Yeah.
right? So where is this two-way street? And you're right, it is that mindset shift, which is takes the time to do. It's not it's not a quick process, but when you take the time to do it, it's also lasts a long time too. And
Right.
it's a whole new way of thinking and being, right? It's a mindset shift that people are going for. And it's a very unique journey for each person to see where they want to tune their mind to.
Yeah. Without mindset, I would struggle to find any sustainability in that change. I really
Yeah.
believe that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the what and the how.
Yep.
So Cherie, as we, it's been a really, again, I've been honored to work with you alongside you and seeing the professional you are in that room. I've had a few chats offline too, very personable, and I love the way you think too, and like your commitment to the field. I mean, the stuff that you've done, the people you've served, and how many variety of ways. Like, I want to thank you for being part of that shoulders that we're all standing on and seeing. I hope to, maybe have you back on or continue our work together, how we can help no codes, help it really create the structural differences for healthcare system. And as we kind of start wrapping up here, curious, any um, final thoughts or things you want to leave our audience with related to coaching or our work together in general? And then also ask a follow-up question where we can find more information about you. So any final thoughts before as we wrap up here?
Sure. Yeah. Well, since our topic we kind of, did some swerving, which I always appreciate. But since we were talking about the new competencies, I would just say for folks to take a peek, they're on the website now, and start thinking about how to get up to speed on these new competencies, because we really want our profession to be held at a very high standard. I think we all, in every discipline, we want that. And there are a few new ones in there that were completely not in the old ones. For example, considering your neuroscience background, Alzheimer's and dementia made it in this round. So making sure we're up to speed on those competencies that weren't in the last round, and you know, elevating the profession in that way, and then continuing those goosebump conversations. I love that we gave each other goosebumps because I got them too. I think it matters to use I would argue, our foundation in positive psychology to keep things moving in the direction we know it needs to be, and not letting the systems break that down, because we really need to use our strengths in positive psychology and change and understanding how people change to make these changes happen. And then, yes, of course, we're always welcome to have new students in our master's program at the University of Minnesota. You can find me there. And Wellness Coaching Elevated it's just wellnesscoachingelevated.com for those studying for the exam or need CECs, all that good stuff. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. This is super fun.
Yeah, what a nice full circle moment too. Back in February meeting and now still worked way this way. So thank you so much. We'll
Yep.
put those links in the description as well, and where we host different podcasts. Really, truly thank you for everything you've done and for today's conversation, for those goosebump moments. Let's continue having them and
Let's do
continue
it.
that positive effort to make change systemically. It's really truly an honor and privilege to work alongside people who are so passionate. So
Yeah.
thank you for being our guest, and thank you all our audience for the wonderful comments or any questions or some really nice comments, which we'll share with you later, Cherie. So thank you everyone who tuned in, and we'll see everyone back in 2 weeks for our last episode of the season.
All right.
Take care.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
bye.